In this video, we are building a Premier League-style club intro in DaVinci Resolve, using FC Liverpool as the example. The idea is pretty simple, but the result looks big straight away. Start with Google Earth aerial shot of the stadium. Bring in the club crest, place it right over the ground. And then build the whole thing in Fusion so it feels locked into the shot. So this is not really about one club only. FC Liverpool is just the example here. The same workflow can be used for any football team, as long as there is a strong stadium shot and a clean logo to work with. It looks cinematic, it feels premium, and once the structure makes sense, it is actually a lot more manageable than it first looks. So let's break it down. Before getting into the notes, it helps to look at the final idea first. The shot starts wide, with the stadium sitting inside the surrounding area. Then the camera moves around the ground in that slow aerial motion. And as the shot develops, the club logo becomes the main focal point right in the center of the frame. That is really the whole concept here. The stadium gives the intro scale, the logo gives it identity, and Fusion is what ties those two things together. So, the build is doing three main jobs. First, the edit page gives the shot its timing and structure. Second, Fusion handles the tracking and the 3D scene. Third, the logo gets integrated in a way that feels designed into the footage instead of just pasted over it. And that is why this style of intro works so well for football content. It's short, clear, and instantly recognizable. Now on the Fusion page, the node graph looks more complex than the actual idea behind it. At a high level, there is a logo branch, there is a track 3D scene, and then everything gets merged, lit, and rendered out. The logo side starts with the crest image. Then runs through a few preparation nodes before being turned into something that can live inside the 3D setup. That is where the image gets cleaned up, adjusted, and prepared before it is sent into the 3D scene. Then the rest of the setup handles the actual scene structure. That includes the track camera, the 3D merge, the lights, and the renderer. There is also a switch in the node tree, which is useful because it gives some flexibility in how the logo is handled. So instead of locking the project into one single version of the logo treatment, the setup leaves room for different visual options. That is one of the good things about this node tree. It is not just building one shot, it is building a workflow that can be reused. So let's start with the logo pipeline. The crest comes in first, and before it goes anywhere near the 3D scene, it gets a bit of preparation work. That is important because if the logo is not balanced properly at this stage, the whole intro starts to feel off later. This part of the flow is doing the usual cleanup and control work. The logo gets adjusted visually, scaled into a better working size, and cropped into a clean frame so it behaves properly once it moves deeper into the composition. That may sound basic, but this stage matters a lot. A football crest can look great as a standalone image and still look completely wrong when it is dropped into a moving stadium shot. It might be too large, too bright, too flat, or just awkwardly framed. So this early preparation stage is really where the logo starts to become part of the intro instead of just an imported asset. Then after that, the logo gets passed into the material and 3D side of the build. Once the logo has been prepared, the next step is getting it into 3D space. That is where the image plane comes in. The logo is no longer just a flat image sitting in 2D. It becomes part of the 3D environment, which means it can be positioned inside the scene and react more naturally to the rest of the setup. That is a big part of why this kind of intro feels more polished. If the crest were just dropped over the footage as a regular overlay, it would probably still be readable, but it would not feel integrated. Once it enters the 3D scene, it has more presence. It starts to feel like it belongs inside the shot. And that is really the goal here. Not realism in a strict sense, but believability. The viewer should feel that the logo is anchored to the stadium shot, not floating randomly over it. The switch node is one of those small things that makes the setup smarter. Instead of forcing one single logo treatment, it gives the composition options. One pass is the Liverpool crest of the logo, and another pass brings in a separate 3D object, the Liverpool emblem. That is useful because it means the intro is not boxed into one look. A flatter logo treatment can feel cleaner and more graphic. A more dimensional version can feel bolder and more dramatic. So even if the final shot only uses one of those options, the setup itself is flexible. And that is exactly the kind of thing that helps when building templates or repeatable club intros. The same structure can be reused, but the final look can still be changed depending on the team, the channel style, or the mood of the video. This is where Fusion really starts doing the heavy lifting. Because the aerial shot is moving, the logo cannot just sit in the middle of the frame as a static graphic. If that happens, the illusion breaks straight away. The logo needs to move with the shot in a way that feels consistent with the camera motion. That is why the camera tracking stage matters so much. The footage gets analyzed. Fusion builds a camera solve from the movement in the shots, and that solved camera becomes the foundation for the 3D scene. Once that part is working, the logo can be placed into the scene in a way that follows the motion much more convincingly. Now, this is also one of those areas where it is worth being honest. A solve can look decent overall and still need cleanup or refinement. So the important takeaway here is not that tracking is some magic one-click step. The important thing is that the track camera is what gives the logo a believable relationship to the stadium shots. That is the core of the effect. Once the logo is in the 3D setup, lighting starts to matter. Without lighting, a 3D element can still track correctly, but it often feels lifeless. It just sits there. It has no shape, no presence, no real connection to the rest of the scene. So this setup uses scene lighting to give the logo more form and make it feel more intentional. One light helps lift the overall scene, while the other gives it direction and shape. That is enough to make a big difference. The goal here is not to turn the logo into some hyper-real object. The goal is just to stop it from feeling flat. Once it reacts to light, even in a stylized way, it sits much better inside the shot. After that, the whole thing gets rendered back out into the final composite. This is the stage where all the separate parts finally come together. The track camera, the logo treatment, the 3D placement, the lighting, and the final output all meet here. And this is where the workflow starts to feel very clear. The edit page gave the intro its base shot. The logo branch prepared the crest. The 3D setup gave it presence. The tracking gave it believable motion. And the renderer turns all of that into the finished effects. That is really the chain from start to finish. The whole intro plays exactly the way it should. It starts wide, so the stadium has room to breathe. Then the camera move brings more attention toward the ground, and the crest becomes the main focus as the shot develops. That combination is what gives the intro its identity. The stadium makes it feel big. The logo makes it feel like a football club intro. And again, that is why this workflow works beyond just FC Liverpool. Swap the badge, swap the stadium, keep the same build logic, and the same idea can work for any football club in the world. So that is the full breakdown of the intro. One last thing. Here are the exact settings for every node. Pause whenever you need to, or just take a screenshot.